Howdy, everybody. And welcome to this week's episode of Paint with Pyra. Now, I am filming this early, on actually the 13th of December. But I already have next Wednesday's episode where I gessoed this canvas done. So I guess that means this is actually going to be going live on Christmas Eve, December 24th. So Merry Christmas, everybody. And here is your Christmas rat, Ricky. So as I mentioned before, this episode, or did I say episode? This painting is going to be one that I'm working on that I'll put into the acrylics class in the fine arts division at the Cowichan Exhibition here next year. I mean, it'll probably eventually find its way in, down the road into an exhibition or whatever. But it's one that the only time I work on it, I'm going to be filming it so that we have the whole process, right? We're not jumping around too much. So last time we gessoed the canvas to try and knock out some, maybe even most, maybe even all, well, no, not all, but some of the canvas texture, right? And that means that the next stage is to make it stop being white. Now, this is going to be my grid reference, but my printer, I think, is running out of, I mean, there's pink and yellow in there. I don't know, but my color on this, and this came from the same printer, like printed out 10 minutes apart. So something was running low here. It's not actually going to be this green. But then this is kind of a little pink, and we don't want it too great. But this would kind of be more the color reference for the background, right? It's the same photo. So what we're going to have is up at the top, because we've got this pinkish tone, we're going to have it kind of, for what I call my color wash layer, it does show up through in tiny snippets. I don't, well, I have a Noah's Archipelago one. Hey, Pyra, when you're editing, put through a close-up image. So what I do, and I should have, might have been an edit there, but I probably put an image from a painting I'm doing of another character of mine, Noah Thorson. I like having a really vibrant first layer of color, and then I do my gridding and drawing over top. And then as I get close to, say, when we're getting close to Ricky's arm here, he wears a little black leather jacket, and then there'd be that white tablecloth, which actually looks kind of greenish here, but it'll read as white. I may have a tiny little gap, right? So rather than have the white of the gesso show through, I want a bright color that'll show in that gap. And the reason why, another thing I like to do is the main color, I'll pick something that contrasts quite strongly, even a complementary color, right? So this top area, so we're going to kind of cut the canvas this way, diagonally, like a thing. So what's going to be the background here, that looks more pinkish in the color reference photo. So we're going to do like greens and turquoise. And then down here, it's a little more greenish. There's some, even in the proper color reference, there's some green undertones in that greenish and purplish. So down there, or kind of bluish greenish, pardon me. So down in this corner, we're going to have pinks and yellowish, orangey-ish. And then it's kind of a no man's land in here because we got the flowers and stuff like that, right? So let me put these references out of the way where they won't get wrecked. And by the way, there's a close-up. This one initially I was thinking I was going to have it as a horizontal, but then I changed to, and I assembled this. This is a reference photo I took at the Cowichan Exhibition in 2022 because I've been volunteering with CowX. I mean, I didn't in 2020 or well, I don't think I don't think it happened in 2020. Or if it did, it was like a drive-through. It was very weird because, well, I mean, we all remember how messed up the world was at that point. But from when I moved here in 2017 was the first time I attended, and then 2018, 2019 I volunteered with my needlework group. We managed the creative stitchery, and then 2022 I started volunteering again with that. And then a friend of mine who was running the creative stitchery wanted a break, so I took over and I was the chair for creative stitchery in 2023. And I think it was 2023 and 2024. Did I do it for 3 years? I don't even remember, man. I definitely did it in 2024. I think, yeah, 2024 I took it over. No, I did. 2023, 2024. And then none of this matters because this is. Well, anyways, my friend then had some things that shifted in her life, and she had more time. So she had said, well, if you ever want to give it up, I can take it over again. So she and I were co-chairs last year, and then she's chairing it from now on. But I'll still be there volunteering. Anyways, point is, I spend a lot of time at the Cowichan Exhibition when it happens, and I've had some painting. I've had mostly prints, but also some cartoons and one painting in Cowix in the last couple years. So I'm working on this for next year, and because these banners every year at the Cowichan Exhibition, those hang up in Mellor Hall for the hall exhibit. So it's kind of going to be fun to have them actually in a piece that's shown there. So that's the thing. And then the story with Ricky is, now we have a from the kitchen for division for baking and whatnot. There actually isn't any cheese making, any cheese section. But we do have a homegrown cannabis section because that's legal in Canada now. So Ricky is after weed and cheese, and he's pointing to his homemade Ofishul Juj badge. And the working title is probably going to be Take Me to Your Cheese section, or something like that. But anyways, so that's the story, right? Anyways, let's move that over here. Yeah, I don't know that I'll use this brush. It's kind of small for what I'm going to do, but I got a palette knife. And a big old brush to goober things around. So, and I did this with a couple other canvases, and I realized I put way too much paint on, and then I had wastage at the end I had to scrape off. So I'm going to be a little more judicious this time. Let's see here. And I'm going to try to not smack the camera too much. And I will also, I don't know, for lack of a better term, wrap my paint. Which is to say I go over the edges with it, because anytime I've tried to have my edges neat and tidy and stay white or whatever, it just doesn't work the way I paint. So we will goober the edges. That's probably way too much yellow. Anyways. And because I'm going to be painting over this, I'm not going to be too concerned about doing a tidy job or whatnot. I want coverage. I don't even care if in the odd spot you get a tiny bit of white going through. In fact, sometimes I'll mix white into the colors if I want them more pastel or whatever. But yeah, basic thing is just get some coverage, and you can see the texture of the gesso coming in underneath that. These colors are going to mix right on the canvas, which is cool. I'm trying to almost like buttering a cake on the sides. I will turn the canvas around so I can get that far side before we switch to the other color. So we'll be using this because I need to kind of almost like scrub in to smear the paint around on this side. did actually kind of this same color combination on the Ricky's still life that I just finished, and there's like a painting tour on my channel, but you only saw a tiny bit of it. See, and on this side it's more kind of unbroken, and over here it's a little more blended, but that's kind of cool. So, and I don't mind, like, this is going to be pink, but I don't mind if there's some spots where the, you know, the green shows through. Now let's turn this around so I can get at, of course, when I flip it back over, you know, I'm going to end up with a green thumb, which is kind of fun. I mean, I garden. I was going to make a joke about it would be for the first time. I do garden, but a lot of my plants suffer from neglect. So I could use a green thumb, but, you know, I don't think the paint kind of green thumb really counts. So I'm also scraping off the excess. You can see that, but then that goes on here. I don't mind if it's a little bit thicker on there. Because again, it adds to more texture, but sometimes in the areas where you're going to have a face, you don't want like a line going through. It's going to make him look like he's got a scar. That's fine. He'll just tell people he was in a knife fight at CBGB's or something like that. Ricky aspires to be a Sid Vicious kind of punk rocker dude, but sometimes, well, he's not really much of a liar. He does misunderstand things and misreport, but whether he would really try and pretend like he got in a knife fight at CBGB's if he had like a raised paint edge kind of scar on his face, I don't know. But it seems like something he might do when he's drunk to try and sound cool, and then he'd kind of say, well, not really, but, you know, I thought it might sound cool. So, yeah. I got the yeah. Basically, I'm just kind of goobering paint onto the edges, because when I do actually paint the painting, if I have something at the edge, like that table will wrap around type of thing, so that you don't have a plain white edge, because it's not gonna look right anyways. We won't worry too much further about that. I don't, like I said, I don't mind if there's some texture from the painting knife at this stage. I know his head's going to be around here, so I'm going to try and keep that a little bit flatter. So now we flip it around, and now let's add, there is some greens here. Let's add maybe a tiny bit more yellow. And also, these are like the student grade paints. They're kind of cheap and crappy. Like, I do sometimes use this stuff for later layers, but really, this is kind of the application I really want them for, because I think if you do, not that I'm using a huge amount, but that's a huge glob of paint, right? I mean, that's like that. So it's kind of nice to use those for your base coat. Oh, that's kind of neat where it really breaks up. Rather, you know, basically I'm saying I wouldn't necessarily want to use paint that cost, you know, $40 for a small tube for this stage, because, you know, you're using a fair amount. And I'm trying to not, like, it is mixing and going a little bit brown here, which is fine in the corners and whatnot, but like I do want to be kind of careful in how I do this, so that we keep like this vibrant sort of mix. Which is to say, for everything I just put down, I'm going to put another gob over on that end, and then we'll get it going over the side. And also use a little bit of a lighter pink to this is kind of fun because there's a jagged edge rather than a blending where those colors meet. And we is pretty much done the front side. I just got to butter the sides. And I may have to pour a little bit more paint on my knife to get it to wrap around. But now we're going to do a little bit of goobering. Some people would stop here and sell this painting to a dentist. I shouldn't pick on dentists. That sounds so awful. Actually, my dentist has an actual like fine art piece behind his receptionist desk. And my previous dentist in Vancouver actually had some really awesome landscape paintings. I don't mean like the ones that are very like sedate and like, hey, I love Bob Ross as much as the next person, but like not that kind of like a landscape, but one that was like really kind of semi-abstract and like really vibrant color and whatnot. So I'm kind of being unfair in making that joke, but I think people also know what I'm talking about. That a lot of times, like waiting room art is kind of like doesn't actually mean anything, and it doesn't, And even that's kind of me being biased, my bias, right? But there is actually, I do watch Bob Ross stuff sometimes before going to bed. He had a very soothing thing, and it's fun to see the technique, even though his subject matter is radically different from what I do with my cartoon rats and stuff. But he would do things where he's doing the very first layer where he's got like gonna do a sunset. So he's got like some yellow in here for the background of the background of the background, right? And then a reflection on the water. And then he used to have this joke that I've heard him made in several episodes. Like, well, look, now you have a masterpiece for the Museum of Modern Art, but we're gonna keep going. I always thought that was kind of funny, It's a bit of a dick thing to say, but also like totally justified and hilarious because you wouldn't expect it to be said. So, and he was right. So there we go. Kind of the edges sometimes are the place you really want to get it because get that paint worked in because otherwise you kind of end up with spots. So there we go. We've got our masterpiece for the Museum of Modern Art. So once this dries, our next episode, which I'm probably gonna for the next because now I'm like a week and a half ahead or something ahead of schedule. I may take a week or so off of working on and filming on this one and work on some other stuff. But I've got a bunch of little paintings done. Like this is one I did for 6x6. Just over there, I've got like a 30x40. So I did a bunch of gessoing and this sort of color underlayer stuff over the last few days. So the next step once this is dry is I've got to take, here it says grid reference. That means I'm going to figure out the exact size of this and that. I mean, this should be, it should be, okay. Now I have to do math, cue the Jeopardy theme. It's 24 by 30-inch canvas. So this is this is probably 8 by 10. No, that's not right. think sometimes my printer likes to enlarge things beyond what they're actually supposed to be, and then it crops it weird. Like I had a couple references I printed in the last week where I had to print them like 3 times because it was trying to make it as wide. Anyways, it's a whole thing. But I'll have to measure this, figure out what the dimensions are here, make sure the aspect ratio, like the proportions are correct. If they're not correct, then I have to like crop out whatever to make them correct on this. Figure out, like I may do, sometimes if the math works out, I'll do like a 1 centimeter grid and then a 1 inch grid on the actual canvas. And then you do little, anyways, that's the next video I'll demonstrate. It's a slow, tedious process. So I'll probably show it started and then like film, like speed things up as I'm doing it. But basically there will be squares on this drawn with acrylic paint pen. And then and on here with just regular pen, and then in each square, you know, if his eye is there, I proportionally draw it bigger than that. And once the image is transferred that way, then we can actually start painting, but that'll be in January, right? So, anyways, I may take the next week or so and do that with the other canvases I have ready to go. But the next time I film one of these Paint with Pyra videos, we'll be doing that with this image on this canvas, and then we can get painting. So, relatively short video. Oh my God. So far, it's only 22 minutes. I think there's a minute at the beginning I need to cut off because I hadn't actually started talking yet. This is shocking because my other videos on this channel are like an hour long. Wow. I guess you can listen to it at like 0.25 speed, and then it makes it kind of the same length, but then I'll sound really slow. Anyways, short and sweet one today. The next one is for the grid. Like gridding, I always find it takes like 2 hours. I won't inflict a 2-hour video on you guys. I'll speed things up. But now we've got that there's no blank white canvas showing through. So that is it for now. And like I said, I figured out I'm actually posting this video on Christmas Eve, so I hope you all have a Merry Christmas if you celebrate. If you don't celebrate, well, I think it's a stat holiday most places, so you get a day off of work, and that's also awesome. And we will see you next week for gridding. Working on, like I said, I'm probably going to call this painting when it actually gets hung up at the Cowichan Exhibition. I'll probably call it Take Me to Your Cheese section. But I'm calling it Ofishul Juj as my working title. So little Ricky B, the rock and roll rat, and I'll link all that stuff below, as well as the previous video and some other stuff in the description box. But we now have the base color that very little of this will show through, but we'll have little snippets. And the color does affect what color you put on top. So it will kind of glow through, especially when you have more transparent colors and whatnot. So anyways, hope you've enjoyed it. Talking to you again next time. Like I said, Merry Christmas, and we will talk to you just before the new year. Bye for now.